This is the downfall of Destiny 2 explained, and it is top trending in the Destiny 2 category right now. Everyone's talking about this, so let's jump into it and see what we're cooking up right now.
Destiny 2 once boasted hundreds of thousands of players exploring the stars. At the launch of its Lightfall expansion, over 300,000 Guardians were playing at once, a franchise record. Fast forward 1 year later, barely 10% of that population remains in the game's servers. What happened? How did a looter shooter that seemed destined for greatness fall so far from grace? Today we're uncovering the downfall of
10%, I'm trying to do the math here. We're at 300,000 and now we're at like 50,000. Let me do the math here real quick. It says it's like 15% roughly. And to be fair, we're talking about the launch of the game, which Lightfall launched at 316,000, but definitely didn't retain 316,000 players. Like this is Lightfall right here, 316,000 players, right? And then this is January, February, 312,000 players. So it stayed hot for a little bit, and then it dropped in March, 142,000, April, 192, May, 120, and June, we hit down to 87,000. In fact, the low point for Lightfall was right here, which is 46,000, which is crazy when you think about it because we definitely have hit some pretty consistent low points. The peak for what was meant to be Edge of Fate is this little tiny bump here, this little chode here at the end, but it should have been up here. But we are keeping things relatively consistent. This is an interesting graph right here, okay? I wanted to talk about this before we jump into it too far. We start off at 99,000. A month later, we're still at 48,000. We're averaging about 50,000. I guess that is kind of consistent with what happened with Lightfall, though, because Lightfall dropped here, and then a month later, it still had, it retains the players really good for the first month, it seems. Destiny 2 holds its players pretty good for the first month, and it looks like the second month is really telling for the game. For the final shape, though, it dropped off a cliff really fast. Final shape was like people played the campaign and then they were done. Boom, gone. Anyways, back into it.
Destiny 2. From controversial expansions and broken promises to player exodus and Bungie's own missteps. This is the story of how Destiny 2 lost its way. To understand the fall, we have to remember the rise. Bungie's Destiny franchise began with huge ambition. The first game, Destiny 1 2014, overcame a rocky start to win players over with its satisfying gunplay, addictive loot, and
she's playing Destiny Rising B-roll? What the heck?
Epic sci-fi universe. By the end of Destiny 1's run, after acclaimed expansions like The Taken King, the community was passionate and hungry for more. Destiny 2, launched in 2017, had enormous hype behind it. Bungie, in partnership with Activision, promised that Destiny 2 would be a fresh start, an even bigger adventure that both longtime fans and new players could enjoy. The stage was set for a blockbuster sequel, and early trailers and beta tests built up sky-high expectations. But underneath the excitement, some warning signs were brewing. Bungie and Activision had mapped out an aggressive content plan, aiming to release a new Destiny installment or expansion every year to keep profits flowing. The pressure to deliver on a tight schedule meant Destiny 2's development was turbulent. At one point, the game was even rebooted mid-development. Still, the game launched to strong sales and optimism. For a moment, it seemed Destiny 2 was destined to surpass its predecessor. Unfortunately, that moment wouldn't last. Destiny 2's launch, September 2017, impressed in scope and polish. A brand new campaign, new planets, overhauled weapons and subclasses, but soon veteran players noticed something was off. In an effort to appeal to a broader casual audience, Bungie had streamlined many core systems. They removed random weapon rolls, so loot drops were identical for everyone, and
Dude, the Better Devils, you'd have like 20 Better Devils and they were all the same.
Forced a rigid 2 primary guns loadout that made the sandbox feel slow.
And that sent us back into the Dark Ages. We still have people rocking double primaries all these years later.
At first, this made Destiny 2 more accessible, no more chasing god rolls or complex builds, but it also killed replayability. Within weeks, hardcore players had nothing to chase and felt the game lacked the depth Destiny 1 had developed. The result? A massive drop-off in engagement shortly after launch. The player count plummeted as bored fans checked out, sounding alarm bells about Destiny 2's longevity. At the same time, Bungie doubled down on microtransactions through the in-game Eververse store. Cosmetic items like sparrows, ship, shaders and emotes, which in Destiny 1 were often earned through gameplay, were now largely tied to Eververse loot boxes.
This was super controversial. Everyone was pissed about this stuff.
This came to a head during the first winter event, the Dawning 2017. Instead of a fun holiday giveaway, players were dismayed to find almost all the new Dawning cosmetics locked behind Eververse RNG loot boxes. You could earn only a few for free. To get the rest of the 60+ new items, you essentially had to buy loot boxes with real money. The community was furious. Bungie was accused of acting like a money-grubbing Grinch for the holidays. Hashtags like Remove Eververse trended as players vented that the game was prioritizing monetization over player goodwill. Bungie quickly promised changes to Eververse after this backlash, but the damage was done. Trust was starting to fray. And if
To be fair, trust in Bungie actually started to fray well before all of this. A lot of people criticized Destiny 1 because it was very lazy, they said. Like, new content was dropped, but then there was no updates or follow-ups. Like, when the Taken King dropped in September, there was nothing to follow it until eventually enough pressure came from the community, and they were like, okay, we're going to do an April update to the game. And if you think about that, though, imagine something drops in Destiny 2 right now, September, and nothing has changed about it at all for 7 months. We are so far removed from that world now. We get a new patch every Tuesday at reset, it seems like. Sometimes we get 2 patches in 1 week because things break and fall apart and Bungie has to fix them. So a lot has changed. People will call and criticize Bungie, and we're really mad at Bungie for being very lazy in Destiny 1. On top of that, we also had the introduction of microtransactions into Destiny 1, which was heavily criticized when it was launched. The turmoil and the frustrations have been there since the beginning, is what I'm getting at. Has it gotten worse? Was Destiny 2 the worst of the worst? Yeah. Destiny 2's launch, Destiny 2 Year 1 was the worst time in the 11 years of Destiny's history, period, by a long shot.
that wasn't enough, Bungie was also caught throttling XP gains behind the scenes at launch, slowing down how quickly players could earn bright engrams for free. When players discovered this hidden XP cap, it sparked another scandal.
The XP scaling scandal. Dude, this is unlocking a core memory for me here. Man, this is a throwback here.
Bungie apologized and disabled the XP throttle system, but it reinforced a growing narrative that Bungie was making greedy choices at players' expense. In summary, Destiny 2's first months saw loyal fans disengaging due to shallow endgame design, while the wider community grew wary of Bungie's cash grab tendencies. The honeymoon period was over quickly, and Destiny 2 was in a vulnerable spot. Bungie would need a major course correction to win back the core community.
Bungie's first chance to course-correct Destiny 2 came with its early DLC expansions. Unfortunately, these may have done more harm than good.
Definitely. Curse did way more harm than good.
In December 2017, just 3 months after launch, the first mini-expansion, Curse of Osiris, released, and it is widely remembered as Destiny 2's lowest point. Curse of Osiris was set on Mercury and added a short campaign plus some new activities. But the DLC was painfully short on content and story. The much-hyped character Osiris turned out to be mostly absent. The Infinite Forest feature was a repetitive, procedurally generated zone that quickly got old, and there was no new raid, just a small raid lair. To many players, Curse of Osiris felt half-baked and uninspired, and reviews reflected that. It's no surprise that Curse of Osiris is often ranked the worst expansion in Destiny history, even compared to later disappointments like Lightfall. Players who had stuck with Destiny...
That's a good one. Which was worse, Curse of Osiris or Lightfall? Comment down below.
2, hoping the DLC would save it, felt betrayed by the lack of substance. Worse, Curse of Osiris triggered a major controversy by locking players out of some base game content. When it raised the power level cap, Bungie initially made activities like the Prestige Nightfall and Raid require the DLC's higher power, meaning anyone who didn't buy Curse of Osiris suddenly couldn't access activities they previously had.
Oof.
This paywall outrage forced Bungie to hastily roll back the requirement, but it left a bitter taste. It seemed to confirm some players' fears that Activision Bungie would strong-arm people into buying DLC. By the time the second DLC, Warmind, arrived in May 2018, Destiny 2's player sentiment was at rock bottom. To Bungie's credit, Warmind was a slight improvement. It added a new endgame mode, Escalation Protocol, and had a
Warmind was at least the beginning. I paused this at the right time, apparently. Warmind was at least the beginning of a soon-to-be golden age. Like, it is the precursor that led us into Forsaken.
bit more lore, but it was still a relatively small offering. 2 mini DLCs just weren't enough to fill the void of Destiny 2's shallow Year 1 design. Many players had already checked out of the game, waiting to see if Bungie could truly turn the ship around with something bigger. At this point, Destiny 2's reputation was in peril. The content slump of Year 1 and the underwhelming DLCs caused a drastic decline in active players and community morale. Bungie's next move would be make or break for the franchise's future.
Not make or break, not the Benji quote, no.
They needed to regain players' trust with a bold new vision, and that's exactly what came next.
They did. They had to. It was make or break at this point in time, and that's when obviously Forsaken comes into the play. You know what I wonder about stuff like this? Why does Bungie have such a turbulent history? And then when we hear about Warframe and their development, it's like our close partner here, like in terms of similar-ish genres. Does Warframe not have a turbulent history like this at all? I need to do some deep research on the Warframe developers, because I feel like all the praise goes to them. And when I look at Bungie and all their mistakes, I'm like, every month it's like a crazy new controversy with these guys. Like, what's the contrast is crazy.
September 2018, enter Forsaken, Destiny 2's major Year 2 expansion. Forsaken was Bungie's attempt to right the ship after the failures of Year 1. And it succeeded, at least creatively. Forsaken was packed with content, a gripping, revenge-driven campaign where fan-favorite Cade 6 is shockingly killed off in the opening act.
The biggest mistake ever. You killed off the best character. You killed off the best character of the franchise. It's such a mistake they had to bring him back and then kill him off again.
Huge new destinations, the Tangled Shore and Dreaming City, a complex...
Bring back the Tangled Shore, by the way. Bring it back now.
Endgame storyline with the Dreaming City curse, the first dungeon, Shattered Throne, a wealth of new weapons and exotics, and the excellent Last Wish raid, which to this day stands among the best raids Bungie has ever made. Forsaken also overhauled gameplay systems, reintroducing random weapon rolls and a more complex mod system, bringing back the depth that Destiny 2 Year 1 had lost.
So Bungie fixed the problem that they created. And everyone cheered, right? It's always, I feel like this is the recurring theme here. We have the problem with the Edge of Fate. The power grind is too much, so Bungie fixes the problem that they created. We already had random weapon rolls in D1, okay? We should have just ported the whole game over and improved upon all of those systems. The idea of regressing those systems and then later fixing it is still a really perplexing one to me, and I think to a lot of the Destiny community.
For many players, Forsaken felt like a resurrection of Destiny's potential. It was darker, richer, and more rewarding, clearly built for the hardcore fans. Critics and community voices praised Forsaken as the expansion.
Yo, there's Destin 9 from IGN. Let's go.
That saved Destiny 2 from going under. However, there was a catch. A lot of players who had quit earlier never even gave Forsaken a chance. Destiny 2's poor Year 1 had driven them away, and they didn't all return. Activision noticed this in the sales figures. Forsaken sold okay, but not as well as hoped. In an earnings...
They're too greedy, okay? They're setting the bar too high, and they're way too greedy. Forsaken should have done great numbers compared to where we were at, and we should just be thankful that people were willing to give it a second chance.
Activision executives candidly stated that Forsaken did not achieve our commercial expectations. They pointed out that many of Destiny's core players still hadn't re-engaged with the game, even though the content was high quality. This disappointment from Activision set the stage for a momentous change.
Well, just wait until... Imagine if Activision heard the news about Edge of Fate.
Just a few months later, Bungie and Activision announced an end to their partnership. In January 2019, Bungie negotiated to split from Activision and gain full control of Destiny going forward. Why the split? By all accounts, Activision was unhappy with Destiny's performance and perhaps with Bungie's delays and high costs. Bungie, on the other hand, chafed under Activision's demanding release schedule and creative control. Forsaken's lower-than-expected sales might have been the last straw for Activision, while Bungie leadership was reportedly quite happy with Forsaken itself and disagreed with Activision's assessment. So, they
Activision having demanding release schedules is a good thing. All right, this might be my unpopular opinion throughout this one, but demanding release schedules and keeping tight deadlines, which does kind of put a crunch on the studio, is better for the consumer and the experience for the player. I'm a fan of that. I don't hate on Activision for that, and I think that Bungie could use some more of that. In fact, maybe Sony needs to crack the whip a little bit more and start getting some content pumped out, because now we're down to 2 a year, right? And we got 1 raid a year now. It's just the restrictions. When you don't have restrictions placed on you by another company that needs you to be profitable, then you just loosen the restrictions on yourself so much to the point where you lose and you bleed your audience too far. This is the problem. We were doing really good with 2 raids and 2 dungeons a year. It was a working model. Now we've regressed back to 1 raid, 1 dungeon a year. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what are we thinking with it? This is not good. If Activision was at the helm, they just wouldn't allow it. They would be like, no, you will release 2 raids a year and you will release 2 dungeons a year, or I mean, I don't even know what the or else, right? Or else, right? The ominous or else.
parted ways. Bungie would self-publish Destiny 2 from here on, free to steer the franchise as they saw fit. The community largely celebrated this news. Activision was often blamed for Destiny 2's early missteps, fairly or not, and now Bungie had independence. The future of Destiny 2 was filled with uncertainty, but also hope. However,
And then Gambit came. No. Yes, the first thing they do, Gambit, right? No, that happened with Forsaken, but that's funny. After Activision left, you would have think it would have been a massive improvement given the community sentiment, but it definitely wasn't.
Independence would bring its own set of challenges for Bungie, namely, how to keep Destiny 2 thriving and financially viable without Activision's support studios or funding. The next chapters of Destiny 2's life would be defined by Bungie's own decisions, some good and many controversial.
after splitting from Activision, Bungie wasted no time reshaping Destiny 2. In late 2019, alongside the next expansion Shadowkeep, Bungie launched Destiny 2 New Light, making the base game free to play. This move aimed to lower the barrier for new players and expand the audience now that Bungie's revenue would rely more on player engagement and purchases of expansions or cosmetics. Shadowkeep
This was incredible, actually. The change for Destiny 2 turning to a free-to-play game was praised by everyone. And to be fair, lowering that barrier of entry so that way everyone can at least try the game, I think is an excellent marketing strategy when you have a really good product, like a video game, like Destiny 2. But now, fast forward all these years later, we do know that this is very problematic when you don't have a hefty anti-cheat, right? Now the cheaters and the cheating infestation has gotten out of control, and it's become pretty problematic. I still think it was the right play. I think that the biggest games in the world should all be free to play at their base level, so that way people can just jump in and experience the fun world that they have to offer. If you're going to have PvP, at least with a serious anti-cheat, apparently in PvE too, because now the cheaters are cheating in the raid races, so definitely an anti-cheat in both.
October 2019, took Guardians back to the moon for a spooky, nostalgia-tinged campaign. It wasn't as large as Forsaken, but it kicked off a new approach to content delivery, the Season Pass model. Instead of 2 DLCs per year, Bungie would now deliver 4 smaller seasonal content drops per year, with 1 big expansion annually. Each season
So this is how they supplemented Activision being gone, was the seasonal model.
introduced a new activity, story missions told over weekly installments, and a paid season pass with rewards to grind. This drip feed model was Bungie's answer to keeping players continually engaged, and of course, to create steady income from season pass sales and Eververse microtransactions each season. In concept, the seasonal model did keep Destiny 2 more active. There was always something new every 10 to 12 weeks. But in practice, new issues arose. FOMO became real. Seasonal content was designed to be semi-temporary, with activities and storylines vanishing when the season ended. If you took a break for a few seasons, you'd come back to find you literally missed entire story chapters and rewards that were no longer accessible.
And Bungie got really lazy with the seasonal model. They just kept copy and pasting the same menu that you had from the previous season over and over and over again. Like it wasn't creative. There was no ambition in it. They were just like, yeah, this works. This makes a lot of money. Let's just keep doing it until we hit a brick wall. And then they did hit that brick wall, and they had to jump into episodes, which ended up being kind of the same thing, but at least mixed it up enough that it didn't feel as cheap as seasons were. And then now here we are today.
Players loved the regular cadence, but others felt it was exhausting and manipulative, pressuring them to log in constantly or be left behind. Bungie also had to ramp up the Eververse store to fund ongoing development. Under Activision, Eververse was already contentious. Under Bungie alone, it arguably became even more central. For example, multiple armor sets each season would be sold for premium silver currency, real money, instead of earned in-game. Cosmetic monetization hit a peak around 2020, causing community outcry that Eververse was getting all the cool stuff while the actual game loot was reskinned or less exciting. Bungie eventually responded by shifting some cosmetics back into gameplay rewards, but the memory lingered that at times the game felt free to play in the worst ways, aggressively pushing optional purchases. On the positive side, Bungie did leverage seasons to experiment with storytelling. Some seasonal storylines in 2020 to 2021 were well received, like Season of Dawn's time travel Saint 14 story or Season of Arrivals leading into the next expansion. Bungie also began improving Destiny 2's foundations. They upgraded the armor system, Armor 2.0 with stats and mods, added replayable secret missions, and in 2020 even finally implemented a real anti-cheat to combat rampant cheating in Trials of Osiris, which had returned but was initially plagued by hackers. These
Oh, that didn't age very well, did it? Now they have an anti-cheat, and there's still a bunch of cheaters in the game.
improvements were welcome, yet for every step forward, Bungie seemed to pair it with a controversial step back, and the biggest controversy was just on the horizon.
Oh, the biggest controversy on the horizon. What is this one?
Perhaps the single most fateful decision Bungie made in Destiny 2's history was the introduction of the Destiny Content Vault. In mid-2020, Bungie announced that to keep Destiny 2 sustainable for the long term, they needed to remove old content from the game. Destiny 2's install size had grown huge, and maintaining all those locations...
What was its install size pre-Beyond Light compared to its install size now? You know, like what was the size? They're like, it can't get this big, because I feel like the game has to be just as big pre-Beyond Light as it is now, right? Like what changed? What happened? Why were they suddenly able to allow the game to grow more now? Like, is it cloud that's allowing this? Because the cloud existed back then too. It's not like the cloud was just invented this year.
and activities was slowing down development. Their solution? Vault, aka temporarily remove. Less played destinations and campaigns, freeing up memory and allowing them to even rework and re-release some Destiny 1 content. On paper, it might have sounded somewhat reasonable, but the way Bungie executed it was a PR disaster. With the law,
I wonder if that was the worst decision, content vaulting, or was Destiny 2 Year 1's launch the worst decision? Or Curse of Osiris, or Lightfall. We have some tough choice here. Honestly, there's like the Mount Rushmore of bad decisions for Bungie is definitely content vaulting, is Destiny 2's initial launch, Curse of Osiris, and Lightfall. Those are the four those are the four final bosses for what the fuck were you thinking, Bungie?
launch of the Beyond Light expansion, November 2020, Bungie removed an enormous amount of Destiny 2 content and story. The original Red War campaign and the first two expansions, Curse of Osiris and Warmind, were all deleted from the game. Entire planets, Mars, Mercury, Titan, Io, vanished overnight, along with their strikes and open world areas.
Hey, don't forget about the Tangled Shore, all right? Never forget the Tangled Shore.
Of unique missions and stories that players had paid for were no longer playable at all. The community reaction was severe backlash. Players understandably were upset that content they owned was taken away without their say. New players coming in via free-to-play were completely confused. The core campaign and introduction were gone, replaced by a very disjointed tutorial. It didn't matter that Bungie claimed this was for the good of the game's future, it felt like a betrayal. People had purchased a game and its DLCs, and Bungie just removed that product from their hands. To many, this was the cardinal sin Bungie would never be forgiven for. Even years later, you'll see players say, "Isn't Destiny 2 that game that deleted its own story campaign?" Yeah, no thanks.
Crucially, content vaulting shattered player trust
It's cited as a top reason why lapsed players never return. Why invest time or money if Bungie might erase that content later? The DLCs that got vaulted, Curse of Osiris, Warmind, even Forsaken eventually, became badly reviewed on Steam out of protest. In fact, some community members point to vaulting as the #1 factor in Destiny 2's player decline and revenue drop in the following years.
True. Vaulting was peak low point for Bungie, I guess. Peak low point, does that even make sense? Peak mistake from Bungie. Who AOK'd content vaulting? That's what I want to know. I want to know who in the studio thought that was a good idea.
Bungie eventually did bring back some vaulted bits, like the Vault of Glass raid from D1, some old strikes, and in 2023, they even unvaulted the Warmind Mars area as a repurposed zone. But the full campaigns that were removed remain inaccessible. The loss of so much content remains a stain on Destiny 2's legacy. As if that weren't enough, around the same time, Bungie also introduced sunsetting of weapons.
Oh god, yeah, sunsetting. Why doesn't Bungie think this through and realize that if this was like the worst decision they ever made and everyone's really mad at them, why not just come up with a massive update, reintroducing all of those things back into the game to all players for free? So that way it's like, okay, we did mess up, but then we brought it back, like we fixed it, you know? Because I feel like the idea of like, well, we messed up, but just move on kind of hurts and it burns them continuously. Like it's still used as like the main frustration point for players and a disinterest point. Obviously it doesn't fix everything because you did it one time, but if you fix the problem that you made and then you say you will never ever content vault the stuff again, then you win the whole trust back. Like they're okay, cool, you brought everything back and you're not ever doing it again, so now we know that if I play Destiny 2 5 years from now, I won't lose the campaign. You know, the Red War campaign will be there. You know, it doesn't necessarily fix the whole problem because you started it in the first place, but at least wins back the trust from those that want to continue to play, right?
And gear. Another hugely unpopular move. They decided that weapons and armor would have an expiration. Any gear older than about 1 year could no longer be infused up to the current power level cap. The idea was to keep the meta fresh by forcing players to use newer loot. In practice, it just felt awful. Players saw beloved guns they'd earned, like raid weapons, pinnacle weapons, become useless in endgame activities for no good reason. The community revolt was swift, and after a few seasons of pain, Bungie capitulated and reversed the sunsetting policy. But not before a lot of frustration, and the exit of many veteran players who were tired of Bungie nullifying their hard-won rewards. Between content vaulting and sunsetting, the latter half of 2020 dealt a serious blow to Destiny 2's goodwill. Bungie made these choices in hopes of managing the game's technical debt and longevity, but the immediate cost was alienating a significant portion of the player base. Destiny had always been about investing in your Guardian and the world. Now parts of that world were literally being deleted. Some fans said, "That's it, I'm out."
As Destiny 2 entered 2021 and 2022, another issue became apparent. Stagnation in core game modes, especially PvP. Destiny at its heart appeals to different types of players. Some love the cooperative PvE grind, others live for competitive Crucible matches. Bungie, however, increasingly focused on the PvE seasonal content and expansions, while Crucible and Gambit were left to rot with minimal updates. This neglect ended up driving away Destiny's competitive community and variety-seeking players, contributing to the overall downturn. Bungie went over 2.5 years without adding a single brand new PvP map to Destiny 2. The first new map after 2018 finally arrived in 2022, and it was just one map, and not a particularly popular one. Most Crucible updates were simply returning Destiny 1 maps or shuffling modes around. Beloved
Man, after all this time, I forget half of these controversies. I forget, like, enough time goes on, you know what I'm saying? I forget some of these. I remember now, I'm like, yeah, that was a really big deal. What the hell? Why did I forgive Bungie for that? We're going on like the 46th consecutive controversy here. Like, what the hell, Bungie? Anyways, let's jump back into Caldera, you know? It's like, Bungie, we're sunsetting your stuff. That's fucked up. Anyways, back to Caldera.
modes from D1 like Rift only came back briefly. Meanwhile, cheating ran rampant, especially in the PC environment. Before Bungie implemented anti-cheat, Trials of Osiris, the endgame PvP mode in 2020, was notoriously overrun by cheaters, account recoveries, and matchmaking exploits. PvP players felt unheard and undervalued, as Bungie rarely communicated a roadmap for improving Crucible.
Honestly, it was a golden age, though. Let me be real here for a minute. The cheating was so terrible, it made playing a little bit miserable if you really wanted to win. But matching the cheaters and beating them with 3-peeking was kind of funny. I kind of had fun a little bit with it. Because if you get so good at the game that you can beat someone that's actually cheating, there's something nice about that. It was kind of funny. It was kind of fun. It got old, but it was fun for a period of time.
Trials mode itself had to be disabled multiple times and reworked because it couldn't maintain a healthy population. A number of prominent Destiny PvP content creators and streamers who had kept the community engaged either left the game or reduced coverage due to frustration with this state of affairs. All of this meant—
Not me. I didn't stop. The Destiny Stockholm Syndrome stayed true, and we played. We played through all the highs and all the lows, and we'll play to the very end. In fact, if there ever is a last day in Destiny, I will be there playing that day, and I will be the last Guardian at the tower doing the last emote as the servers shut off. We never stopped playing.
Destiny was losing one of its pillars of content and community. And then there's Gambit, Destiny's PvEvP hybrid mode introduced in 2018's Forsaken. Gambit saw no new maps after 2019 and only a single merged mode when they streamlined it in 2021.
Honestly based, though. Delete Gambit. Gambit was a mistake. Gambit should have never happened. Gambit is like a fever dream of a mode that I feel like I'm going to wake up one day and be like, oh my God, thank God it doesn't actually exist. But then I look inside the director and it's there staring at me, this big, ugly green playlist that is just horrible and needs to be deleted and eradicated and removed and we never like just F Gambit.
Essentially, Gambit was put on life support. No significant changes, rewards, or attention. Even die-hard Gambit fans, a rare breed, gave up hope as the mode languished with stale content and lingering balance issues. By sidelining these modes, Bungie inadvertently shrank Destiny 2's appeal. The game increasingly catered to one type of play, the PvE looter, at the expense of others. So while PvE story enthusiasts might hang on if the seasonal narrative was good, the competitive crowd saw no reason to stay. This segmented decline further eroded the overall player count.
By 2022, Bungie had managed to stabilize Destiny 2 somewhat with the well-received Witch Queen expansion. The Witch Queen in February 2022 delivered a fantastic campaign and was praised as one of Destiny's best expansions, showing Bungie could still hit high notes. Off the back of that success, excitement grew for the next chapter, Lightfall, announced for early 2023, billed as a Penskemating climactic showdown in Destiny's Light versus Darkness saga. Marketing for Lightfall was bombastic. Neon cyberpunk aesthetics on a hidden city of Neptune, a new subclass called Strand, and teasers of the big bad, the Witness, finally taking center stage. The stage was set for another hit. Lightfall launched in February 2023 with massive sales and the highest concurrent player counts Destiny 2 had ever seen on Steam. But almost immediately, Lightfall's story left players baffled and disappointed. Instead of the dark, serious tone people expected after Witch Queen, Lightfall delivered a Saturday morning cartoon vibe in a neon city. The plot revolved around an inexplicable MacGuffin called The Veil that wasn't explained at all. Even
The MacGuffin.
by the end of the campaign, players had no idea what the Veil really was or why it mattered. The main villain, the Witness, barely appeared. Instead, we got a lot of screen time with a new character, Nimbus, a jokey, irreverent cyborg cloud strider, whose tone felt wildly out of place during what was supposed to be an apocalyptic showdown. The campaign's writing and dialogue were widely mocked. Some lines became memes for their awkwardness. It didn't help that Lightfall's marketing seemingly misled fans about the narrative. We expected answers and high stakes, and we got confusing questions and filler. Many in the community called Lightfall's campaign one of Destiny's worst ever, perhaps the worst since Curse of Osiris.
Lightfall's saving grace was Strand, though. Strand is a really cool subclass. That aside, though, yeah, it was rough.
Expectations had been sky high after Witch Queen's storytelling, so the crash was brutal. Even the post-campaign content on Neptune felt underwhelming, a far cry from the mysterious unfolding secrets of the Dreaming City in Forsaken, for example. The saving graces of Lightfall were its gameplay changes. The new Strand subclass turned out fun, and Bungie introduced some great quality of life features. An in-game loadout system, mod customization improvements, etc. But these positives couldn't outweigh the community's sense of letdown. Lightfall's narrative felt like a detour when Destiny's saga had no time for detours.
The backlash was swift and loud. Destiny's
It was filler, is what it was. Filler.
subreddit and forums filled with disappointment and anger. Video essays and reviews tearing down Lightfall's story gained traction. Some of those even went viral, tapping into the community's frustration. Bungie at first defended their creative choices, asking players to wait for the story to unfold in seasons and the final expansion. But this wasn't very reassuring to those who expected payoff now. The phrase "trust Bungie" had turned a bit sarcastic by this point. Crucially, Lightfall marked a turning point for player population. After Lightfall's launch spike, Destiny 2 saw one of its steepest declines in active players ever. By a few months into 2023, player counts on PC were hitting all-time lows. The seasonal content following Lightfall, Season of Defiance, Season of the Deep, had some interesting bits, but many lapsed players simply didn't come back. The trust and excitement were gone for a large chunk of the audience. To many, Lightfall's missteps were the last straw after years of cumulative frustrations.
The aftermath of Lightfall truly exposed the crisis facing Destiny 2. By late 2023, data from Steam charts and other sources showed Destiny 2's PC population at its lowest point in the franchise's history since the PC launch, even lower than during the content drought of 2018. And it wasn't just a seasonal dip, it felt like a collapse of the foundation. When a game loses a significant chunk of its most dedicated players, the alarm bells ring. Bungie and its new parent company Sony, who had acquired Bungie in mid-2022, were certainly hearing those alarms. Internally, it was reported that Destiny 2's revenue had fallen 45% below projections for 2023, a dire shortfall attributed to Lightfall's poor player retention and fewer microtransaction sales. This had tangible consequences. In October 2023, Bungie took the drastic step of laying off around 100 employees, roughly 8% of its staff, including some beloved community-facing roles like community managers and even composers. The studio also announced delays. The final expansion of the current saga, The Final Shape, was delayed from early 2024 to June 2024 to give the team more time to get it right. Bungie's next project, Marathon, a separate PvP extraction shooter, was also delayed further out. These developments were shocking to the community. Bungie had been riding high after the Sony acquisition, but now it appeared Destiny 2's downturn had created a financial and morale crisis at the company. Reports emerged of low team morale and heavy pressure from Bungie's leadership and Sony to fix things fast. It didn't help that Bungie's top brass made some PR blunders during this time. For example, Sony's PlayStation boss remarked that Bungie needed to improve accountability for development timelines and expenses, which didn't inspire confidence publicly.
Which is literally what Activision was doing for them, as also, just to bring it back full circle here.
On social media, some Bungie higher-ups went radio silent, and the usual upbeat weekly communications from the dev team became more sparse, as if a cloud of uncertainty hung over Destiny's future.
The community's perception of Bungie also hit an all-time low.
By 2023, a segment of the player community had become outright hostile in tone. Constant negativity, doom posting that Destiny is dead, and dunking on Bungie's every move. Some of this was a natural response to frustration, but it also became almost a trend to be as cynical as possible about the game. Content creators hopped on the bandwagon with critical videos that garnered huge views, fueling the narrative of Destiny's downfall. It created a feedback loop. Players were unhappy, creators highlighted that unhappiness, more players saw it and felt validated in quitting or complaining. Bungie had a harder time cutting through the negativity, even when they tried to announce improvements. Bungie did make efforts to course correct publicly. The Destiny 2 game director at the time even released a candid state of the game video from his home in late summer 2023, acknowledging player concerns like lack of PvP support, repetitive seasons, and promising changes on the horizon, like an upcoming Crucible overhaul, finally.
And now Joe's gone, dude. Bring Joe back. We need him. Bring back Joe Blackburn.
They also announced that after the final shape, they would move away from the seasonal model to a new episodes format to shake things up. These were intended to address the very real grievances players had. But unfortunately, by this point, a lot of players had a "we'll believe it when we see it" attitude. Too many promises in the past had fallen short. On top of that, Bungie's work on Marathon, their first new game IP in years, unintentionally made Destiny 2 players feel like second-class citizens.
They had dedicated servers. They first thing they said is, we're giving this game dedicated servers, and we've been asking for that for 10 years.
When Marathon was revealed in mid-2023, some Destiny fans felt Bungie was diverting talent and attention away from Destiny toward this new shiny project. Later, when
It's not a shiny project. It's not. You remember, you can't polish a turd. It's not shiny.
negative news leaked about Marathon's development, such as claims of lackluster test feedback and even controversies like Bungie artists using plagiarized artwork in teasers, it reflected poorly on Bungie overall. If Bungie was struggling to get their next game right while Destiny 2 was faltering, it painted a picture of a studio in turmoil. All these factors combined into a perfect storm by the end of 2023. Player sentiment at rock bottom, player population in freefall, and Bungie scrambling to regain trust and stability. For a live service game approaching its 10th year, Destiny launched in 2014, this kind of crisis can be existential. Would Destiny 2 even make it to its grand finale? And beyond, many weren't sure.
Destiny 2's story, both the in-game narrative and the real-world journey, has been a roller coaster of highs and lows. As we reach 2024, Destiny's decade-long Light and Darkness saga was about to conclude with the Final Shape expansion. Bungie's mission: deliver a satisfying finale and try to win back the hearts of disillusioned players. It was truly a last chance moment in many respects. In a surprising twist, when the Final Shape finally launched, after its delay, it turned out to be excellent. Without giving spoilers here, it provided a strong conclusion to the Guardian's long journey and tied off story threads in a mostly satisfying way. For the first time in a while, Destiny 2's narrative left players feeling emotionally fulfilled. Ironically, this created an unusual dynamic. Some players said the Final Shape was so good it gave them a sense of closure, a perfect point to exit the game on a high note. After all the years of investment, they saw credits roll, figuratively, and thought, I'm happy ending my Guardian story here. In other words, delivering a great ending, while positive, also meant some veterans felt finished. And indeed, the player counts after Final Shape didn't explode upward. Many people were content to ride off into the sunset.
So here we stand in 2025, with Destiny 2 at a crossroads.
The saga that carried the game for 10 years has ended. A new chapter is supposed to begin. Bungie has plans for more expansions or episodes in a next saga, but the player base is a fraction of what it once was, and the trust in Bungie's direction is severely weakened. The past few years of controversies, from content vaulting to monetization grievances to lackluster updates to Lightfall's misfire, have left a mark that a single good expansion can't erase overnight.
Bungie now faces the daunting task of rebuilding faith with their community if Destiny is to continue. They need
Calling it the Final Shape and then having a continuation afterwards was an interesting choice, right? Usually every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And maybe they should have said the almost final shape, you know? Maybe we should have left an asterisk. The final shape, but like the game's still going on, you know? And I remember them constantly having to give us updates saying, okay, it's the final shape, but the game's still going, guys. We're still doing, we're doing the Edge of Fate. We're doing Frontiers. And it's an interesting way of spinning things. I think that the Light and Darkness saga didn't need to end in that way. You could continue it. It could just be a story within a bigger story. I don't understand exactly why it needed to end and then they wanted to continue afterwards. I do think that's a misstep. I think that some good stories continue, especially if it's a live service game, right? It's meant to go on and on and on and on forever. Then the stories would continue and, you know, new characters are introduced and you keep zooming out. Think of it like that. Like the Light and Darkness, maybe it's a very small piece in a much bigger puzzle, and then you zoom out and then you zoom out again and again and again. Probably would have been a better approach, because calling it the final shape, apparently everyone was like, yep, this is it. The last thing. We played it, now we're done, because the population has been a lot lower ever since.
To prove that the mistakes contributing to Destiny 2's downfall have been learned from, that they won't arbitrarily remove paid content again, that they will consistently support all aspects of the game, PvP included, and that they will respect players' time and financial investment. Actions, not words, will matter here. Is Destiny 2 truly dead or beyond saving? Not necessarily. This game has been declared dead by critics several times in its life, yet it has bounced back before. Think Forsaken Revival after the Vanilla D2 slump, or Witch Queen after the Sunsetting era. The potential for another upswing is there, but it will require Bungie to deliver excellence consistently, and perhaps a bit of luck to recapture the magic and lure players back. In the end, the story of Destiny 2's downfall is a cautionary tale of how even a beloved franchise can falter through a combination of corporate pressure, poor decisions, and broken trust. It's a reminder that a live service game lives or dies on its relationship with its community. Bungie's choices, both good and bad, wrote this history. Destiny 2 achieved incredible highs and sunk to incredible lows. The next chapters will determine if it can ever soar again, or if this
The next chapter will be make or break, surely.
long-running saga will quietly fade out.
Destiny 2's journey has been long and turbulent. Millions of Guardians forged memories in this world, triumphant, frustrating, unforgettable moments. Its downfall was not a sudden collapse, but a gradual unraveling of player goodwill and passion. Can Bungie ignite that passion once more, or is the Traveler's Light destined to dim? Only time will tell. One thing is certain, the lessons from Destiny 2's downfall will echo in gaming for years to come.
What a great video. What a very well put together video from Cloudy Games there. My final thoughts after watching all of this. It's been a very turbulent 11 years. It's been very turbulent. In fact, this was just referencing Destiny 2's controversies, not even Destiny 1, or even the development of Destiny 1, which there was a handful of controversies before the game even released in regards to the narrative and countless issues. It's been a rough 11 years for Bungie. Being a Bungie dev, while it's very lucrative, apparently, you know, we can ask Pete about how lucrative it is exactly. Definitely a stressful job, to say the least. And they have struggled quite a bit, and we keep saying it's so over and we're so back every year. It's so over, we're so back, over and over again, that you kind of just get this, endless loop of like, all right, I don't think this game ever does die. And that is my final conclusion after watching this video. And maybe I live to regret these words, but I truly think that Destiny as a franchise, they just keep making stuff forever, and it's always going to have a niche audience. I don't think it's ever going to be mainstream. It's not going to be Fortnite. It's not going to be something huge, crazy game, but it's always just going to have this like niche audience. And if it dwindles in population, that just means they have to do more layoffs. Probably doesn't mean the game dies, though. I don't think there is a point where Destiny dies. And if it is, we're probably like 5-10 years away from that, because there's enough money it's generating now and enough devs working on it now to sustain it for a very long period of time. Destiny dying would be like after our 3rd, 4th, and after our 5th round of layoffs. You know, after 5 rounds of layoffs, we might be talking about Destiny dying. But right now, 2 rounds of layoffs, 850 devs working on the game, it's probably fine for a while. It's probably fine. Does that mean everything is perfect in the game? Of course not. Of course, some things need to change, but the current trajectory is definitely lower than it ever was. But I think Destiny is going to hang on. I think we're going to make it through it. I think if you really wanted my prediction, Destiny at worst case scenario, it at least has like 2-3 years. Worst case scenario has 2-3 years. Destiny best case scenario, it goes on forever. I'm going to be 100 years old laying in a hospital bed playing this damn game. If best case scenario, right? Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. That's a wrap on this one.